Okay, recording should be in progress. Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to the NASA Alumni League First Thursday program. Today is November 2nd, and I'm Lisa Spence. I'm your host for today. Our speaker today is Mr. Joel Walker. Joel serves as the director of the Center Operations Directorate. It's a role that he's held since 2002. Center Ops is responsible for ensuring the availability of facilities and services required to keep the Johnson Space Center operational, including buildings, utility systems, logistics services, security services, construction and maintenance of new and existing buildings, and environmental services, including wildlife management, which no longer includes the co-op program. A lot of changes to facility. It says that right here. A lot of changes to facilities and buildings have occurred at JSC since construction began in the early 1960s, and many more changes are coming to keep the center not only operational, but able to meet the changing needs of current and future programs and the ever-changing workforce. Joel's talk today will cover the JSC Master Plan for real estate, what has been accomplished, what changes are being planned, and the strategy for growth. So, Mr. Walker began his career with NASA as a co-op in center operations at the Kennedy Space Center, where he was able to watch the first launch of the space shuttle. After 4 years, he transitioned to the Goddard Space Flight Center before finally getting smart and arriving here at JSC. During his 43-year career in federal service, he's received numerous awards and commendations, including the Presidential Green Gov Sustainability Hero Award, JSC's Director Innovation Award, Center Director Gold Coin, and the Presidential Rank Award. He's also a member of the SES. Joel holds a BS in Transportation from the University of Tennessee and an MS in Business from UH Clear Lake. In addition to his NASA career, Joel serves as the chairperson, Manned Spaceflight Education Foundation at Space Center Houston, Board of Directors from 2007 until 2011, and currently sits on the organization's Board of Directors. The multi-talented Joel enjoys the arts and is an active member of Houston's Urban Sketchers chapter. He plays mandolin, guitar, banjo, dulcimer, and washtub bass. Joel and his wife live in League City along with their barking dogs. All right, so at this time, I'm going to ask Joel to come up and I'm going to share his presentation with everybody. I think I am.
Change slides, just push down on the arrow.
Yeah, you can just advance it
Okay.
right there.
That'll work.
Okay. All right. If it's working.
So congratulations on being better at IT than every other meeting I've ever gone to, right? So usually we spend about 30 minutes trying to get the slides up, trying to get the sound right and all that kind of stuff. So thanks for coming and thanks for being online. And mostly today, I'm going to talk to you about kind of where we are, kind of what the strategy is looking forward, some of these new projects that you're hearing about, kind of what, why we have that strategy, what we're trying to do, and, you know, maybe some impediments to it. And then some of the closer things, some of the buildings and facilities and things we've got going on now, and some of the things that we're getting rid of. So first of all, let me start by talking about organization. We went through a big organizational change, and I don't know how many people have heard about MAP, that phrase. Yeah, some of the people that have more recently retired. Well, that was a big organizational change for us, and I'll tell you, and it impacts kind of what we do in the future, and I'll tell you how. In the past, center director gets money and then decides center ops gets so much, information resources gets so much, right? That's where we got our budget from. The budget would come to the center, and the center director controlled it. Under MAP, what we were looking at was trying to do some things more enterprise wide, right? So HR, every center has HR. So why don't we manage HR from headquarters and have common services, common contracts, things like that. Try to drive some efficiency by doing those functions similarly at separate centers, because they all follow kind of the basic same rule. Same things happened with center ops. In our org, it was done a little bit differently than some of the other mission support orgs. In our org, I report to the center director. She signs my performance plan, gives me my grade at the end of the year, all that kind of fun stuff, punishes me as necessary. But my money and my people come from a headquarters budget directly to me, right? So it creates this kind of tension between what your center wants and what your center is able to do, and then kind of this enterprise-wide efficiencies you're looking for in contracts and functions, right? And we all know centers kind of grew up individually with their own culture, right? And we may take the trash out twice a week and somebody else takes it out once a month. We mow the grass a lot more than they do in Cleveland. You know, there are some differences from centers and the center's missions. The enterprise kind of look at it as trying to drive common things so we can get out of being customized so much everywhere. But I kind of serve two masters, right? I have to keep the headquarters people happy, right? For logistics and security and environmental and facilities. And then I have to keep my center director happy. And I want to keep her happy the most because she signs my performance plan still, right? But also want more money from headquarters. And so I want to keep them happy and do things that they want us to do. So it creates a little bit of a tension. The center ops that you might have known when you were here is the same basic org, because part of the rules of this new transition was a center director can organize the people at their center the way they want to. So I still have security is still in center operations, but security actually doesn't report to me. Security reports directly to security at headquarters, right? So it will look the same at the center, but the reporting structure, the funding comes straight from headquarters to the security folks at JSC. The projects come straight to the security folks at JSC. The direction, the performance plans, the whole 9 yards is a direct line to headquarters. And they do that at every NASA center. But at JSC, they show up in my org chart, right? So it's a little bit, it's a little bit like the matrix stuff that programs have gotten used to, you know, where money comes in from one direction. You're trying to keep your program people happy if you're in engineering because they control the money, but the director of engineering might control the FTEs and that kind of stuff. So we're kind of putting that same boat. The one big area where that has affected folks a lot is things like real estate, which used to be a center function, has now been pulled up to headquarters and is a headquarters function. So the people here at JSC that do real estate actually work for headquarters. So even though they might sit next to us like they've always done, they're actually a headquarters employee. And so the approvals and things like that that go through normally are even though you're talking to somebody in the next cube, they're a headquarters employee, right? So that impacts a little bit of, and part of that is to drive that consistency across NASA centers. And that tugs a little bit at what individual things center directors or a center would want to do. So we have to kind of navigate that. This coming year, starting in January, we're going to be starting on our next version of the master plan. We did one in 2017, and next year's is going to be a little bit different. Headquarters is laid out for us an agency framework, and I'll tell you some of the strategies on that, and then how we're interpreting that at JSC. And we'll be doing a master plan that will kind of meet those headquarters requirements. One of the things that we're doing, the big thing, and you've probably seen it and heard about it, is reduce the footprint, right? So get rid of facilities you don't need. If I'm going to build a new facility, and going to advocate for that, I have to show that I'm only building back 75% of what I'm volunteering to tear down, right? So if I have 2,000 square feet that I want to build a 2,000 square foot facility, I got to show more than that I'm going to get out of, right? So it's trying to, for even for things that stay the same, if we have the same number of people, the same kind of program, we're trying to condense so that we can take care of less. And the big problem for NASA for many years, my career, has been facility funding, new facilities, and taking the care and feeding of our old facilities. Now, our buildings were built, the majority of our big buildings were all built kind of at the same time. And they were full of asbestos, which is an awesome thing because it doesn't burn. But we have more asbestos here at JSC than the rest of the agency combined, right? So it's kind of a bane for us. It makes it harder for us to modify things and make quick changes. I'm still running, we have 900 air handlers. Still about 25% of those are original equipment, right? So that's pretty good. 60 years on a piece of equipment that's designed for a life of about 25 years, right? And we're still using these original buildings with cracked foundations and roof issues. And I believe when the Corps of Engineers first built JSC, they did amazing. I mean, if you think about what they accomplished in pretty much a 2-year period, it's amazing. They did it for speed and to get things up and running, not necessarily for kind of long-term maintenance, right? So some of this equipment we have is locked into rooms where you have to basically destroy the room to get at the piece of equipment, or chop the equipment into small enough pieces to get it out, right? So it becomes expensive to maintain. So what we're trying to do is, as we look at the things that we're doing, trying to do only what the government needs to do and needs to be involved in, and reduce that footprint to what we need. Now, that's been affected by COVID, as you can imagine, and all the telework, right? And here at JSC, we do 3 days a week is the kind of the requirement or the desirement from the center director, right? Most folks follow that. Wednesday is our day when everybody's kind of supposed to be here, right? Tuesday, kind of the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of folks like me show up every day because most all of my work's on site, and it is better for me to be on site to see if the grass is too high or if the power's still on, all that kind of fun stuff. Other folks, and folks in my own org, do a lot of different things telework, and it's great. You're able to conduct this meeting and have a great big group because a lot of folks can tie in more conveniently from home than coming out here. It's great for you to be in the room, but you can still get a lot from being online. So we're trying to get to the sweet spot of that, and that causes a lot of trouble with meetings and the IT and who's here and who's not here and what's happening that day, and is that person teleworking that day, or is that person on site today, right? We're still, I think, got a lot to learn in that case and find our sweet spot in that, but we're doing a lot better at it. The number of people coming on site has continued to grow. We're at about where I think we'll be for a while. And so I'd say 75% of the folks, are here on any one day. Fridays, of course, are, considerably less. And people complain about it, right? I teleworked during COVID, and now you want me back on site, right? But you can learn a lot from people face-to-face on site and in the hallway and doing a lot of other things like that, right? Sometimes you can get your point across with body language and a whole bunch of other things, right? On the flip side, on telework, you can attend a lot more meetings, and you can kind of sit in the background and do stuff while something's happening on your computer that you're listening to, right? So there's goods and bads for both of it. But I think we're about where we want to, about where we're going to be. But in that 3 days a week, we can also show that not everybody's coming in and staying 8 hours, right? You got a lot of folks that'll come in for a half a day and come in for those important meetings in the morning, perhaps, and then, go telework the rest of the afternoon, vice versa, a couple hours, come in for a couple hours on one day that they didn't plan on coming in to do a specific thing that requires them to be on site. So all that's, it's not, there's not a single answer that's working for everybody, right? Everybody's kind of, I won't say doing their own thing, but working with their supervisors to find what rhythm works for them. During COVID, I thought for like my folks that do construction, they would need to be here 5 days a week, right? I found that, that they were reviewing drawings a lot, right? And they would say, hey, look, I can review drawing at home. Nobody comes by and asks me the latest football score. I can, focus and concentrate. So even the jobs that you think would be, on here 100% of the time, there's still a lot of things that you can do telework. So we're getting used to that. What that has driven, though, for NASA-wide, other centers are making much bigger use of it. So things like if I was advocating now for a new office building, no way, right? In fact, Marshall was tearing down a building and fixing to build a brand new building, and it got nixed at the last minute. And because it was, it was like, I don't think you're going to need it, right? You're building it for the population you had. The population you have now needs to share space, right? And we're working really hard to change our culture to share space. I would love to get to the day when you're in an office on Monday and the boss tells you you're going to move to a different building and do a different thing starting next Monday. And, you didn't keep your old office and then get a new office. You just grabbed stuff in your backpack, grabbed your laptop and moved, right? We could be that flexible. But we got a ways to go to get there because right now, most of our offices are shrines to everything that we've ever done, right? And it's hard to get past that. Reserve parking is another great example. Hey, we still have reserve parking and it's really spotty now. I would love to get away with it, but reserve parking comes, I got a promotion, so now I get a reserve spot, so I feel better about things. My office has 3 ceiling tiles instead of 2. All those things kind of go with the culture we've built, and we're slowly getting through that. I think, there'll be a day when it doesn't matter. If you talk to somebody coming out of college, right, it doesn't really matter that much, right? They're not interested in so much in having that private office and whatever. If you could give them the option, you can have an old desktop or you can have the latest laptop and you just sit wherever you wanted to every day, right? They're okay with it. That's what they've been doing, right? So our strategy moving forward with real estate is really kind of reduce what we need specifically and try to work with commercial partners to lease or outgrant our property, our buildings, the vacant space we have. Somebody's got an open mic. I'll keep going. Okay, no, it's okay. So try to outgrant that space, release that space. I think it's all right. So make use of the space that we need to keep, right? Even though we may not be using 100% of it. And you've seen this in some areas. NBL is a good example. We've been able to take part of the facility, lease it, and use the proceeds from the lease to help fund the rest of the building, right? And so where we have a testing capability, a chamber, something unique. We're not supposed to compete with, private companies, but where we have something unique that somebody needs, wants to use our testing capabilities, wants to use our training capabilities. How can we work this so that those commercial companies can do it, and then we get the proceeds from it? And the commercial companies I'm talking about aren't necessarily, they're usually NASA contractors somewhere, right, in some fashion, but they're not necessarily working specifically on a JSC thing, right? Commercial companies now have, they have whole projects and programs that don't involve NASA at all, that are purely private, right? But they still need a lot of the same things that we do, right? Same expertise that we have. So where we can offer that, they can come in, do their thing, and pay for that service. We benefit, they benefit. So we're trying to do that. I'll talk a little bit about Exploration Park that you've probably heard of, and the Texas A&M building that's being proposed. I'll talk a little bit about that here in just a second and show you some of those things. But really, that's our long-term strategy is take a vacant land, places where commercial companies could come in, either solely on their own or with using some of our stuff, and develop some kind of a real estate agreement reimbursable Space Act agreement, those kind of things to kind of leverage that and leverage what we have, because there's a lot of places where we're using, we have an old facility we might have used during Apollo. We've been using it during shuttle. Space station may be winding down their need for it. The Artemis program may not be ramping up their need for it yet. So there may be a gap between when space station needs it and wants to quit paying for it, and when Artemis or another program or project needs it. And so try to fill in those gaps with commercial providers. That way they can help fund the maintenance of our buildings and keep them good, help fund the maintenance of some of our capabilities. And so that's kind of the basic strategy. NASA-wide is what they're looking at. They have pulled real estate up to headquarters because there's been some real estate agreements. There was an IG report a couple of years ago, particularly critical of Ames, because they had done some real estate agreements. And if you've ever been to Silicon Valley, people ask me sometimes, why don't we sell this property and make money? Well, if I was in Silicon Valley, I might think about it, but our property is not worth near what it's worth at Ames, right? So Ames has some extremely valuable property, and they had made some real estate agreements that they're kind of stuck with for a long time. That kind of, center directors come and go, programs come and go, and all this kind of stuff. But then there's an obligation on the government for this lease that might be 50 or 100 years, right? And so headquarters wants more involvement in that, just to make sure that we're protected for those long periods of time. We're not looking at, a 5-year period, a 10-year period, because these leases tend to go for a long period of time. You see on the charts 2 pictures, right? That's JSC when it was first getting started, and Building 1. Anybody here when we started, when that was Building 1? Yeah. It was probably pretty airy when we were doing it this way, right? Telephone Road, before we were JSC, we were kind of dispersed around, and that was really interesting. But really, the systems and everything that were put in place, the Army Corps did a great job kind of laying the center out and doing all that kind of stuff. And we really want to protect the mall area. We have 2 national historic landmarks, Mission Control and Building 32 Chamber, right? Those things are going to stay pretty much forever. Our whole mall area is considered eligible to be a historic district. It's over 50 years old. We're the largest collection of brutalism architecture in one spot on one location in the US, maybe the world. So there's a lot of things very unique about JSC that we're trying to protect. So all this growth and the changes that we're trying to do kind of have to, mix with that, right? We have to kind of respect our past and respect our history, but we still got to move forward, right? So sometimes that's difficult to do. So let me talk about a couple of specific projects. Exploration Park. Everybody heard of Exploration Park? No? Okay. So when we want to do this is the area, what's that giant era called? Somebody, I always just call it the giant era, but it's out by Building 14. It goes out in the antenna test range. Yes, it goes out into the field, right? So this is kind of in that area. Down at the bottom left, you'll see that Space Center Intermediate and the fire station. And right off the page on the bottom would be Space Center Houston. So this is that big open field. And so when we want to lease real estate, what we have to do is it's a procurement, but it's kind of a procurement light, right? So we do a business case that says, here's why we think this is a good idea. Headquarters buys off on that, and then we put a notice out, AFP, it stands for something, for opportunity, announcement of opportunity, something like that. And so we put that out and say, this is what we think, right? And here's kind of how we would structure this deal. Is anybody interested, right? And then people kind of bid on that, and then you enter a negotiation phase. This actually has gone out. It's about 240 acres, and we kind of segmented it in those 11.5 acre plots, right? And so it has gone out, and somebody has said, I'm interested. And now it's a period of negotiation. So what are the lease terms going to be? What's the cost going to be? What are all those kind of things? And you have a formula that the CFO uses for what costs you would include, of course, and all those kind of things. But then you enter kind of an agreement of what's it worth to you, what's it worth to us, et cetera. And so, and when we put this announcement out, it's not just to, hey, anybody that wants us to put in anything, right? You can be specific, right? Aerospace related, something that should be near JSC, something have to do with space program, right? You can kind of narrow that field down so that you don't just get a shopping mall or something else like that. And so we've put this lease out, and somebody can bid on the whole thing. They can bid on, one or two. They got to show you kind of what they plan on doing with it, what the time frame is. The interesting part about this is the overall kind of look is we would love to see it be something like at Ellington Field, right? The airport has set up that open property at Ellington Field and tried to focus that for Ellington Spaceport and get those kind of companies in, and you've seen them move in. This is very similar to that, tries not to compete with that, but we think it would be similar. So what we would hope to see is businesses show up in this area that complement JSC, either that we can share information, we can share expertise. Perhaps we have a contract where we've asked for a certain product and somebody says, if I built a building right at JSC, it would be easy for me to move stuff back and forth for testing and use JSC's expertise. That's kind of what you're looking for. But this is going to operate much like a subdivision would operate, where you have, yes.
Hey Joel, this is Rick Nygren. Sorry to interrupt you, but your charts aren't rotating for the guys out in the field.
Okay. Are you seeing the ones with the brown boxes? No.
No, the only thing I see is the building one that's under construction, and underneath it, the early picture of the center, which seems to be in slide. That's the only one I see.
All right. So, see, I spoke too soon on the IT part. That happens sometimes. Let's see if we can get that fixed.
It's sharing. So let's pause the share. Start again.
Yeah, sometimes it gets stuck.
Rick, can you see it now?
Nope, not yet.
Get out and then go back in. Get my meter on.
Looks like you may need to go to slideshow.
Yeah, it is on slideshow. We'll pause the share again.
Okay, we're going to get out of it and then go back into it.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like it's in slideshow out here.
Okay.
Let us know if you see something different.
Okay, it doesn't like that one.
Right now we have a blank screen.
We knew that.
We know.
Now we have Lisa and Joel.
Oh, fantastic. Well, maybe, maybe not. Okay.
Give us just a second.
Thanks for letting us know. Go back to this meeting. You don't have any sound on there, right?
No.
Okay. Okay. It says we're screen sharing. All right, can you see the exploration part slide yet?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, we'll see how long.
You're good. Thank you.
And if the slides don't advance, I'll just talk about this one for the rest of the time. How's that? If you think about it, it's going to operate like a subdivision. It's not going to be, it won't be on our utilities, our electricity, our sewer, and all that kind of stuff. That will be independent. You'll have most likely, right? I can't tell you what the outcome will be because it's, like I said, it's in negotiation. It's in this contract kind of blackout period. But essentially, it'll act like a subdivision. A developer puts in the roads, the sewer, all that kind of stuff, kind of the basic infrastructure. And then you as a commercial business come in, lease property, build your own building, have your own agreement with that vendor, right? JSC is kind of like the HOA, right? So we don't want just, we don't want giant purple buildings showing up, right? So we maintain some control over the architecture and kind of the basic what can be there kind of stuff. But we're not going to tell you what you can do in your building and when you can do it, et cetera, because we're going to move the fence, and the fence will come, this will be outside the fence, right? So that's one of the things that you hear a lot from commercial companies. If I'm coming into JSC and if I wanted to rent office space along with kind of lab space, now I got to go through the whole badging and the foreign national thing and all that kind of stuff. Well, this is going to be outside the fence. And so access will just be from the basic road like you would any other business. And so that'll be a lot easier for you. So we're trying to make it as independent as we can while kind of maintaining that overall oversight. The proceeds from the lease with the vendor then will come back into the center for us to maintain mall area buildings and things like that. So that's the basic concept. We're excited about it because it is more, as you can imagine, the operations and maintenance funding has continually shrunk. So has the new construction of facilities funding, right? So it's very, very hard to advocate for a new building, particularly in the last couple of years. And so we think more development will happen outside the gate, but it will be accessible to us. And it would be great for commercial company to come in, build a capability that perhaps we use occasionally, right? They can also sell to other commercial companies, right? And so they can develop a different business model than being in one of our buildings, working with us on stuff. So we think this has great advantages for us, and we're excited. I hope they sign the lease soon and they can get, busy with electricity and roads and, water lines and all those kind of fun things that they'll have to do. And you can imagine if somebody takes the whole plot, right? It'd be like a subdivision where, phase one, I'm going to develop this area and it'll be kind of these kind of businesses, phase two, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll happen over time. So the whole thing won't, explode overnight, but it would happen in phases. And so this is a big opportunity for us that we're pretty excited about. I'm going to try to advance the slides one. Did they advance?
Yes, it did.
Okay. All right. So, it's about those relationships we have with other commercial companies, either working directly for us or working in the same field or working on the same things, right? It's leveraging that for JSC's benefit. Secondly, facility in the near term that we're talking about. In fact, meetings are going on today and yesterday at Artemis Rock Yard. And if you were here in the 60s, you remember the Apollo Rock Yard. Or you may not. If you're going out to 419, out to the 400 area on that long stretch of road, in this field is an area that there was a lunar yard at one time. And so folks have been working for going back and doing testing of lunar terrain vehicles, that capability. We have a small rock yard now out in the 200 area, but this would be much bigger. And I think of it like the military has Aberdeen Proving Grounds for military vehicles and things like that, right? This is kind of an obstacle course for lunar vehicles. There's one at Texas A&M that they use to test military vehicles on and have marketed to the military. We've gone and looked at theirs and talked with them and talked about, the things they wish they had done differently, the things that worked really well, the goods and the bads, why they did things this way and that way. And so this would be similar to that. It won't necessarily be just a moonscape, but it'll be an obstacle course, if you will. Hills to climb, obstacles to go over, holes to navigate, dust, dirt, all the kind of fun things that you would find on the moon to test these lunar vehicles for the Artemis program. We hope to have a kind of conceptual design, start working on this very, very soon, like the next couple of months. It will not end up being lots of buildings and that kind of stuff. It'll end up being a landscape, a very particularly designed landscape, of course, right? And then there'll be some observation areas, some towers and things like that. And then so we're talking about how to keep the physical structures down to a minimum while still giving folks ability to test out there year round, if you will, right? But it is moving along very well. The one they have at A&M is really interesting. It would start with 30 acres and then would expand from there as needed, right? We have an easement on the last 20 acres to ExxonMobil or somebody. And so we got to clear that easement. There's a pipeline that runs through there and we got to get their permission to build over that. So at the outset it would be about 30 acres, right? And if you could imagine a big hill to climb, speed bumps to go over, inclines to go down, steeper inclines to go up, different at different angles, different things, trying to look for tips and breakage of your lunar rover. So it'll be pretty interesting. We haven't done something like this in a while. The one that's out in the 200 area is basically a hill with rocks, but this one will let you do a lot better testing. Some of the more recent stuff we've done, building 21 on the upper left there, the Health and Human Performance building, that was that's where we do astronaut testing, pre and post mission, do a lot of the science that goes with astronaut health and all that research. That's a really nice science building, replaced building 37. So you may know building 37 is the lunar receiving lab, right? That's what its original purpose was. Then it and this is the way we do it at JSC, right? You build a building for one thing, and then as you move down through the years, it becomes something else, and then something else. And it's not always, the something else it becomes is not always well, I hate to say this, not a well thought out decision, right? You didn't move something, you moved something in it because it was empty and it fit, right? And then you kind of modified it over time. And then you got to some point where it wasn't working anymore, or you needed bigger, or something was bad. Building 37 had great service to the country, but it also had a foundation that had cracked 3 or 4 different times. It had a lot of issues. And if you had ever gotten your blood tested in 37 or gotten a flu shot, right, you had to walk through this maze of offices to try to figure out. And there were signs on all the walls, flu shots this way, flu shots that way, flu shots this way. And then you had breadcrumbs to drop so you could get back out of the building, right? So that's kind of how we use 37. 37 is on the demo list, right? It's going to be torn down. We had started tearing it down with an Army Corps of Engineers contract out of Huntsville. And one of those projects where it seemed like a good idea at the time. Marshall Space Flight Center had really good success with Corps of Engineers in Huntsville, getting some of their buildings demolished. Didn't work so great here. But I think that's what you find sometimes when you do these enterprise things. Works great one place. Does it work great at another place? Well, it might have worked great at one place because the contractor knew all the people at that place. The contractor had a reputation at that city. The contractor had a infrastructure in that city. And then they moved to a different city where they have none of that kind of support. And it doesn't always work well. So we have moved on from the Army contract and we moved to a different local contractor to kind of finish the job for us. And I'll show you a little bit of that in just a second. But this human health and performance building is really nice. So what it has done is create a corridor in the middle of the building for all the utilities to go through, because building 37 had all of this equipment in office space, right? Your lab and your office was in the same spot. And so your cylinders of oxygen and nitrogen and everything were sitting right next to your desk, and you were right next to the electron microscope on your left, right? So it had a lot of issues. And now we have office space, kind of down one side, a hallway, and then the lab space. And all the labs are connected so that if you're working in one area and you need a bigger lab, you can expand, right? And you can talk with the other scientists. On the other side of the building, we have a bigger high bay kind of areas where they do different physical testing for astronauts. So it's a great building. We really like it. In the middle is the new water tower. That's a recent picture. In November, the part on the bottom will be painted with a couple of NASA meatballs and be lifted up. And then next summer, we will kind of activate that system. Our old water tower that's kind of at the end of the road, if you go from the Gilruth and you head back towards the main part of site, that the old water tower will be demolished, and we'll be on basically new water pipes and new mains with a new water tower. So that's really good. The old one leaks and has lots of issues. Emergency Operations Center on the upper right. We used money we got from Hurricane Harvey to build this Emergency Operations Center. It can withstand a Category 5 floods and 4 winds, or vice versa. Anyway, a lot, right? In the past, and it's kind of changed how we operate. In the past, you would have a team of 60 people here on site during a hurricane. But if it got to be like a heavy 2, you get pretty nervous, right? And if it got to be a 3, then we would evacuate site, right? Our security team would go over to Webster's Emergency Operations Center, about 5 people were allowed to sleep there. The rest of the team would just disperse, and it was kind of like good luck, and as soon as the storm passes, come back, right? It's not a good place to be. So this Emergency Operations Center operates as our security headquarters. So day to day, it is security dispatch, the 911 or 5-3s for us. It's attached to the old fire station, right? Which makes sense. It's built up high for floods, and then it's all brick for winds. So our 60 people can kind of overnight in this building, and then as soon as the storm passes, can get right back to work, which is a big advantage for us, because as soon as a storm passes, everybody wants to know, are we open yet? When can I come back? I need to go check on my stuff. I need to do my thing, right? So the mission control folks still kind of do their thing with the backup mission control, where they get away so that they don't lose communications and stuff, but they can transition back much faster. And we can ensure them that, things are looking much better, much quicker. On the bottom left is a new building we're building. We're in design right now. We'll start construction next year sometime. It's an operations and maintenance building. It's a building that's going to replace most all of the buildings in the 300 area. All of those metal sheds that the plumbers, electricians, and all your maintenance folks I've used for years. This building will be a central location, a central place for those folks, shops and office space, and wash your hands and eat your lunch kind of space. It's going to be located right by where the existing water tower is, kind of at the intersection as you come down to the Gilruth. The advantage for that, for those folks, is one, they don't have to drive another 5 minutes and 8 minutes to eat lunch, and another 5 minutes, 8 minutes to come back, right? So they'll be closer to where the work is. Their tools, if they need, tools, it's much closer to where the work is. So we think we'll get a lot of efficiencies out of kind of the maintenance area for that. And those 300 area sheds are not doing great. Does anybody know why we have all of those, Butler buildings or metal buildings? It's an easy reason why we have all those. Because if a building, it was over at the time they were built, if a building was over 500K, you had to get congressional approval to build it, right? Anything under 500K was a local center decision, right? So those buildings all cost $499,000, right? And then the next year you put in a bathroom, then the next year somebody wants windows, and then the next year somebody wants, right? So that's why it made it easy to kind of, as we were expanding, made it easy to say, hey, I need a place for 20 people. Hey, one of those buildings is great. They just don't last that long, right? And particularly, we don't put a lot of money into them. The way we're doing maintenance now, there's just not enough money. So you try to get smarter, right? Try to get smarter digitally with your condition-based maintenance and reliability-centered maintenance and sensors and all this data you're getting from your stuff, so you can predict when it's going to fail and fix it before it fails, all this kind of stuff, right? But at some point that becomes not quite enough. And now we do maintenance on a tiered level, tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a 300 area building would have been a tier 4 building, which is essentially kind of run to failure, right? Your building 30 would be a tier 1 building, which is it's got to operate all the time. And so you save some money because you do maintenance annually on a building, and another building you're doing it weekly or monthly. And we're looking at all the assets in a building, because even in building 30, there's going to be area, if the coffee maker goes out in the break room, that's not something you need to respond to, immediately. So we look at all the assets in the building. What are those assets serving? And is the function they're serving critical, right? And so what we're trying to do is spread the money that we get out even further. It's a real trick. On the right, building 31. Yeah, I had to look for the building number. Building 31. We've done a lot of work in building 31, and it's really just kind of expanding the curation capabilities of building 31 for different astral materials. If you watch the news and saw OSIRIS-REx, we went out, grabbed some dirt off an asteroid and brought it back. It came back into building 31. Future missions that go out and do things, and there's 2 or 3 in the works. We're expanding 31 so we can handle that and handle it with, the latest equipment and the latest filtration and the latest everything, right? So a lot of work going on in building 31. And I think that's that slide. So those are projects that are kind of like right around the corner. One more, we call it the ALOF. It's the Aviation Logistics Operations Facility at Ellington Field. We operate hangars that are 1942 hangars. When Ellington Airport started as a kind of a military base, and they had those wooden hangars, wooden barracks that we turned into kind of warehouses, wood floor, no air conditioning. It's not the greatest place to have parts, aircraft parts. You can't drive a forklift in the building, and it's not air conditioned. So when 45 days of 100-degree weather hits, they have safety standards in place that, hey, if you're going to get a part, we'll give you 15 minutes to find it, and then you got to get out of the building because it's just too hot, right? And so we're replacing a bunch of those. We've traded a little bit of land with the city of Houston so that we can kind of get rid of those hangars and then build a modern warehouse out there to store those aircraft parts and house a few people, right? So that's a good thing. That's also starting. It's past design. It's fixing to start construction very soon. Now, some of the things that we've done, we'll call them divestments. This building 49, the vibration acoustic test facility, was slated to be demoed last year, right? Money had been designated for it. And at the time that we put building 49 on the demo list, the decision was do this acoustic testing at Plumbrook, right? They have a huge facility, right? And so you've seen over time, like ArcJet was another building. We had 2 ArcJets, one here and one in California. So let's just focus on one, and California was picked. The vibration and acoustic testing facility here was kind of sacrificed so we could focus efforts at Plumbrook, right? Have one. So we had money to demolish it, but what we've decided to do instead is demolish after we've put it through a lease opportunity, essentially, right? So we are hopefully by March of next year, we'll have somebody, we're really close to releasing the announcement for this one where people can bid on it like they did Exploration Park. And it'll say basically, it'll be a little bit different because it'll say, basically, here's what we would charge you for a lease. What would you use the building for? What would be the plans for you to use the building? And now let's negotiate and see if we can reach an agreement. One of the other things about 49 that's good that we hear a lot of interest in is high base space. A lot of people want high base space. They have a big spacecraft, or they just have a need for more than, a 12-foot ceiling. And so there's not a lot of that in the Clear Lake area. And so we decided to put building 49 through that process. If nobody wants it, we can go ahead and demolish it, right? Yes, Libby.
Will we still maintain it?
So it would be different than Exploration Park, where we're just, you got your own thing. It's still connected to our utilities and that kind of stuff. So there'd be an agreement. And the way I visualize it is we'd have a menu. Hey, you're going to have to pay us for electricity because we're the provider, right? Do you want to maintain your own equipment in there, the air conditioning systems, for instance, or would you rather pay us to do it? Would you like for us to do custodial work in there, or would you like to just take care of that yourself? The outside of the building would stay pretty much as is, but what you do inside the building, you wouldn't need our approval for, right? You could do all of your own mods, set it up the way you wanted to. You could sublease it if you wanted to, right? So one thought is, hey, it's kind of a big building, but maybe somebody will say, I'll take the whole building. I'm really only going to use the middle bay. But I think I've got people that would like to use, the left and right of the building, if you will, right? So a lot of options like that. So we'll see, right? People express interest in it. We've taken a lot of people through, the Blue Origins, the SpaceX's, and, a lot of folks like that. But it doesn't have to be one of them. It could be a startup, could be anybody. Could be a developer that says, I'll take the risk that I can rent the place, right? But what we don't want to do is us put money into it, right? So I don't want to, it's like you sell a house, it's not going to be a model home. It's one of those as is, right? So, you feel free to walk through, and what you see is what you get, right? And, that affects the difference, of course, is that affects the lease price, right? And there's a lot of really great things about 49, and then there's some pretty crappy things about it too, right? So you just got to know what you get. The water tower we're going to demolish. Building 37 is kind of an interesting one. We've been kind of through this phase of trying to demolish it for some time now. But building 37 has historical significance, right? It's where the Apollo 11 capsule came back into, and where, quarantine started and all that kind of fun stuff, right? So very significant history for the country. So we go through a process where we document the whole building, document everything that happened in there. We make that available on a website, right? And we tell that story. And further, with building 37, it won't just be torn down and be grass like we do other buildings. There'll be an interpretive park there. So on the bottom, it's kind of a rough idea of what the interpretive park would look like. But we'll keep some elements of the building, so that as you walk through this park, you can see this is where that happened. Here's a path that describes something. Here's where the quarantine facility was. Here's where the capsule came in, because it has some really unique elements to it. The hole in the ground that goes like 8 stories deep, we're just going to kind of cap that, right? It'll have it'll look like a little shed, if you will, over that hole, because the elevator it's not real reliable. We don't make elevator for 10 years. They don't work very, very well. So essentially we'll cap that, but not go to the expense of filling all that in and doing stuff with it, right? It just becomes something that's underground and it's there. But for new people that come to NASA, right, you'll have a place to eat lunch, have events, do something outside, and you'll be able to kind of walk through and still understand the history of what Building 37 meant for us, right? So we think that's a good thing. Lastly, I'll tell you, and then we'll start taking questions. You guys might be better at this than I am. When I see stuff every day, you ever think I'm doing stuff every day, but dang, it doesn't feel like you've done much, right? Because you're just kind of seeing this slow progression of things. If you move away from a place and you go back a year later, you start talking about, oh, they got a Target there. That didn't used to be a Target. That used to be something else. Oh, they've done something here by the lake, right? So sometimes I have to go back and look at an old picture and say, okay, things are happening, right? The picture on the left is the 200 area in 2002. The picture on the right is the recent picture that shows all those circles are essentially buildings that we've torn down. 265, right? People remember that back in the DOD days that became a source board building and blah, 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 right? The print plant and the mailroom, all that structure is torn down. The Safety Learning Center, which I think was 225, right? We've torn it down. So the 200 area is slowly disappearing. That building 267 in there is kind of a weird building that does some unique stuff. And the building kind of to the right of that, 261, the radiant heat test facility, is another building that kind of does some unique stuff. But the kind of odds and ends buildings are slowly going away. The other part that we're going to do with some of these smaller buildings, 259, the old astronaut quarantine facility, it's one that we're going to bundle together a number of those smaller buildings and offer them out at the same time. Essentially, here's 5 buildings of that size. Would you be interested in leasing them? And basically, they would be office space or something like that for somebody that wanted a presence at JSC. We do hear, not infrequently. I have a company. I don't want to build a big building, but I would love to have 15 people, 20 people or something at JSC, so we can take advantage of that close working relationship and talking with folks and being closer to where the action is. And so those buildings, I think, would be, prime buildings for that. But again, if nobody wants them, it's great. We just tear them down and move forward. But it takes them off the books. We don't have to repair and maintain them. See if there's anything else. I know you're plan on getting a briefing about the Texas A&M facility, right? It's a little bit wrapped up in the whole Exploration Park thing. I'll tell you just a little bit about where it's at today. Folks are drawing pictures and talking about what it would look like. Essentially a lunar landscape on one side of the building and a Mars landscape on the other with labs, right? It's kind of what the basic thing is. The Greg Bonin, who's the rep from Friendswood, pushed it through the state legislature to create a Texas Space Commission. And that was just this summer. And the Space Commission was given $350 million. And then essentially of that 350, 200 was given to Texas A&M to build a facility on or near JSC to do this, to do certain things. Kind of lunar and Mars landscape testing, some curation, and other things. And so Texas A&M is off looking at what they would build and how they would build it and how they would service customers and that kind of stuff. It would not be inside the gate. It would be outside the gate. Right now, the most likely place, I would say, is kind of behind the Longhorn project, right as you start into Exploration Park, right? And then the fence would come in. That enables them to do a whole bunch of stuff with students, with researchers, and everything else, not having to go through our processes. But they have $200 million to do that specifically. The other $150 million, this Texas Space Commission, it's established, but they haven't named all the people that are going to be on it yet, right? But it's to promote space in Texas. It'll have an executive director. It'll have 3 people appointed by the governor, 3 people by the lieutenant governor, and 3 people by the Speaker of the House. So that's kind of what's going to make up that kind of 9-member executive board. And then that board will vote on how to spend this other $150 million, whether it's grants or, some kind of joint project or something with commercial companies to promote space. So we're excited about seeing that kind of stand up and be just another way of promoting space and promoting the whole aerospace community. We're excited about the Texas A&M venture because Texas A&M's been a great partner with us. They understand students. They have great involvement in lots of student programs from college level all the way down through with Texas Aerospace Scholars and things like that. So I think this building, this facility they're going to build is going to be a great thing for testing. It's going to be a great thing for research. It's going to be a great thing for students to be involved in. So it's pretty exciting. But like I said, they just got that money recently. And so they're really kind of, they've hit the ground running. We had 2 meetings, two all-day meetings this week to talk over their concepts, what they're looking at, for them to get our ideas and our input, and to talk about how this thing might work and what their timeline looks like. So that's going to be a big deal. And for Exploration Park, right? If that building gets built first, what a great kind of anchor tenant, or what a great draw for other companies to come in and build and take advantage of that opportunity. Okay, that's what I kind of had. This master plan will take us out for 20 more years. And it's work harder to do joint things with commercial companies, work harder to support them and to get them closer, and to, and not focus solely on us, is work jointly with them, whether it's a specific contract thing with us or just in general, the space business. Because we really want JSC to be vibrant and to stay on the forefront. And we know that's not going to happen if we just focus on what we have and what we do. We've got to play the big picture, because the big picture these days is, hey, it used to be only NASA did space. Now lots of people do space, and lots of people do space that don't involve NASA at all, right? But it's still space, right? Still hard. And so how we can help each other, that we want to do that, would be central to that. So happy to take your questions.
Got a microphone in the room. It won't work today. I have a question. Does Pecan Grove still exist?
Yes, it does. We have.
If you could repeat the question.
Yes, is the pecan, it's not pecan, it's pecans, okay? However you say it, right? Yes, it still exists. And those were, when the West Mansion was torn down, it was very disappointing, right? That the West Mansion had been bought by Akeem Olajuwon, and I guess he just decided one day that the historic preservation people are about to discover it, so I better raise it so I don't have to spend a lot of money fixing it. I think that's kind of what happened. But the Pecan Grove was planted by the Wests. That was a house that he lived in Houston, and that was his summer house where he could get a breeze off the lake, right? Like in the 30s. We had our wildlife management. Sorry, we're not taking questions yet. I have a wildlife management person that works for one of my contractors, and we started that because we had lots of issues with, raccoons and snakes and deer and things like that, right? And it was kind of a hobby for everybody, right? Oh, Bob knows how to get rid of snakes, and Jim's an expert on raccoons. And then, you kind of think at some point, yeah, so that's somebody's going to get bit or hurt or do the wrong thing, right? So we need to really kind of manage how we coexist with the rest of the property. And the wildlife expert, one of the first things he did was go back through JSC's history, right? And what did the land used to be? How did it look? How has it evolved? And how does that affect today? So it was very interesting. And the most interesting thing to me was, and we're almost on the anniversary, November 20th, I think's the date. Sarah Deal, if you know Sarah Deal Street in Webster, Sarah Deal was the first property owner of JSC. Stephen F. Austin was the real estate manager for Santa Ana, Mexico. And Santa Ana was trying to kind of populate the area if he could, to kind of fend off those Texans, right? And Sarah Deal was the first one that had a deed to the property. So, he's gone from that. and the successive owners all the way to where we are today. And and those stories about, LBJ and Rice University and all those kind of fun things, it's really interesting. I think they all boil down to George R. Brown of Brown and Root, knew LBJ, and they probably went to, I don't know, the Cattlemen's Club downtown and had a scotch. And somehow the magic, of JSC being selected happened. But we don't revert to Rice. We bought the property from Rice. We don't revert back to Rice if we ever go away and those kind of things. Some of those are urban legends. So I found that history really fascinating, and it affects it molds how you do future stuff when you can kind of understand that history, right? History is important.
You indicated that the Exploration Park will be developed by developer.
Yes, Exploration Park will be
How
done.
will that developer get paid back?
So the question is Exploration Park done by a developer? How that developer get paid back? Same way as somebody who does a subdivision. They put in the roads and then they sell houses, right? So the developer essentially will come in, he will pay us a lease cost, and then hopefully he will be able to lease for more to somebody that wants to come in and put in an actual facility, right? So he'll put in the infrastructure, and then he'll have to work a business deal for how he's making money, how he's getting tenants, how this is all working, just like you would in a subdivision.
Money would be the developer's money.
Yes, yes. So we're not, we won't fund those infrastructure improvements with government money. That's all developer. All we're doing is leasing dirt, essentially. Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in the Exploration Park, like this fellow is. And the way you show it, you have it sectioned off into lots. Now, a commercial company wants to come in and build or get a building built on one of those lots. Now, how does he go about that?
That's a great question. So the question is you got these 11.5 acre lots in Exploration Park. How would a commercial company do that? Essentially, in the proposal, we said, here's how we've sectioned this off. You can bid on the whole thing. You can bid on pieces of it. You can bid on acres, right? So you literally could have 5 people come in and bid to do 5 different spots, right? Or one person comes in and says, I would like to lease the whole thing, and then I will sublease, if you will, right? Sarah Jones Development Company comes in, leases the whole thing, and then her company works with SpaceX on what area they want to be in, how much they need, that kind of stuff, Boeing, whoever it happens to be, right? So we won't be doing that other than some general oversight.
So if a commercial company wants to buy one of these, I call them lots, then they have to arrange to get their building built. Is that right?
Right. They won't be buying it. They'll just be leasing it. Property maintains ours. So we'll have the lease of the whole we'll have leased, hopefully, depending on how it all works out, right? The idea is we lease out the whole 240 acres to someone, then that person does the leases with the companies they want to do business with for whatever price they want to do that, right? So
will foreign space agencies also be able to use that land?
yeah, that's a great question. Will foreign space agencies be able to lease that land? I don't know. I don't think we've done that. It's outside the fence, right? So if you're you don't have to go through JSC badging or all that other kind of stuff to go onto the property. Probably could, because our lease will be with the developer, right? And then who their leases are with is kind of up to them, right? The oversight, I call us the HOA, because there is some interface, right? They're going to want to share data with us, right? So there may be some wires that go back, across the fence. We'll have a fence. We might have different kind of access for those folks. But we don't want, I won't say my favorite one, but we don't want crazy businesses showing up in there, right? We want it to be for the purpose that we want it, right? So we kind of maintain that oversight, just like your HOA does. They don't let you paint your house pink, but whether you paint it beige or light beige, that's kind of up to you, right?
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
With the exploration park and the rock yard, what does that do with respect to the location for the Longhorn project and the Atwater Prairie chickens?
So we go up to kind of close to the Atwater Prairie chickens, but not into them. So they'll stay. And I do think that, you know, kind of the top end of Exploration Park will probably be the last to develop. It would make more sense to develop at the road where your utilities are and kind of build out over a number of years. So the Atwater Prairie chicken stuff will stay. Longhorn project will probably, instead of, they have a front pasture and a back pasture. The back pasture will probably move from behind it to beside it if they need it. They haven't really been using the back pasture much, and we've been talking to them about doing that. So the project kind of headquarters there at Rocket Park would stay, but they do have acreage that kind of goes back into that field, and some of that acreage might be shifted.
The Clear Lake City Water Authority would probably be servicing that also.
Yes, Clear Lake City Water Authority would be servicing that.
What authority to support that?
I have not, because I'm not developing it, but the person that leases it from me is going to need to talk to Centerpoint and Clear Lake City Water Authority and folks. And there's been some discussions with them. They're aware of it, you know, aware of what we're doing, but that developer is going to have to work all that out.
I was thinking it was similar question to what he had. Wants to keep the Chinese from running the whole space.
Well, I don't think we
want to do it. What did they try to, at least the entirety?
Yeah, so I don't think we would allow that, right? That HOA would come in and say, no.
I think it was
yeah,
the nature of his question.
Yeah. That's
still,
yeah.
So the business purpose of Exploration Park sounds suspiciously like basically the same thing Houston tried to do with the Spaceport Authority and Ellington. What would differentiate the kinds of businesses that you would want to entice to Exploration Park as opposed to the kinds of businesses that might be more inclined towards the Spaceport and Ellington?
Well, so what's the difference between the spaceport at Ellington versus Exploration Park? And I think the big difference is the runway, right? So if I'm at, you know, that would be one consideration I have, right? We really don't want to compete with them, right? We don't want to go and say, you know, hey, look, let's try to get all their customers out there. They were first. They've got some great businesses going. But if I'm a commercial company, I'm looking at it and thinking, is it a runway that I want to be next to? Do I want to be next to the other businesses that are out there already? Or is there some aspect of Exploration Park next to JSC that I want to be? So that's.
So that was basically the question. What do you think is the attraction in Exploration Park? What's your selling point for Exploration Park?
Just the proximity to JSC. That's a big part of it, right?
You envision that we can still have access to the materials, strategic materials that are in the bottom of the low-level counting lab that's in building 37?
So the question's about the bottom of building 37. I don't know what's down there. I haven't been.
Okay,
so
there's strategic steel that was manufactured before the atomic age.
Yes.
It's one of the largest concentrations of steel available.
Yes.
We need some. It's in that hole.
Yeah. So we're not taking it out, and we're not filling in the hole. So that, you know, if the need arose to have that steel, it's there. Now there's stairs that go down there, so people could go down, but it would be, you know, it's yeah. So it would be one of those where, you know, we're not going to take tours down there, right? Because of safety and stuff. But if there's something down there that we need, you could do it. Yeah. Great.
The companies that want to get into Exploration Park, will they all be related to the JSC work, or could they be something else?
Well, they don't have to be. right? They could have their own outside businesses. So you might have something as simple as a machine shop. They may work with us or may work with other aerospace companies in there. I mean, you just think if you were a developer, what would you be trying to sell? Proximity to JSC, proximity to other people that do the same kind of work that you have, ease of maybe a manufacturing facility. If you got a manufacturing facility, maybe somebody else comes in and builds a machine shop. I think that's what you're looking at. Kind of a similar or supportive businesses for the activity that you think is going to go in there.
There's been a lot of talk about a centralized engineering building.
Yes.
What's the status?
Yeah, yeah. So the current status is phase 1 is in design, right? And so phase 1 is supposed to start construction next fiscal year, next October. And the phase 1 is it's gone through 1,000 different gyrations, because it starts at, this is what we want, this is what we like to do. And then as the budget gets cut, can you phase that? And then as the budget get cut, can you phase that and drop this part, right? So it's gone through that. I mean, we've spent a lot of money reconceptualizing it, but we're in design now. The first piece of it is a high bay across the street from it, if you will. So you have 13 and 15 connected. If you go right across the street, that's kind of the anchor for a new building that's being designed, that we just kicked off design a couple of weeks ago. And part of the reason for that is the cost of modifications of buildings, right? So it went through this phase of, we'll connect 13 and 15's high bays together. And then that became a little more costly than starting from scratch across the street. And so that's kind of where we're started. And we're still talking about, okay, so we have like 5 phases of what we'd like to do. What do we realistically think we're going to be able to get funded? And how's that going to kind of change things? So
It's still active.
it's not dead, but it's, it's also not running marathons, right? So it's been a very slow process. C of F in general is like a 7-year process between when you conceive of something before you break ground, right? And then it's 2-year construction period. So it's a long planning, and that has been on our books for a long time, and has gotten pushed back a year and pushed back a year. That's the thing. One of the things that kind of bugs me is, you get a master plan approved, right? And that's the center saying, this is what I want to do. The first 5 years are pretty concrete. The next 5 years are a little fuzzier. The next 5 years even fuzzier, right? But then as you take it through the approval levels, you get, headquarters says your master plan is approved. And then as soon as it's approved, next comes, hey, you're not getting what you thought you're getting next year. You're getting 75% of that. Can you move this out a year and stuff? Well, that's okay. I can deal with that in the construction world. Where it really hurts is like in engineering, right? So engineering has a plan. They make plans for what they want to do based on what I'm telling them the physical structure is going to be. And then we slip that a year. Well, you lose a year of what you were planning on doing over here on the engineering side. And so the commitment kind of goes one way, right? I can't build anything that's not in our master plan, but they won't fund the whole dang thing, even though they approve it, right? So it's frustrating.
Question?
I have 2 questions. First one's really quick. What happened to all the trees? Is that just drought?
That's winter, I think. I think that's all that is, or just, yeah, the trees around the astronaut trail. Yeah, they're kind of old and drought and everything else. We've replanted some smaller ones in that area.
Wow. Okay, so my real question, I feel like I'm missing something here.
Okay.
It seemed like you showed, I'm gonna probably not call it the right thing, but a rock yard. Had maybe a lunar and a Martian section on site for testing things out, right?
Right.
Okay, and then the A&M one is going to have
a great
yard
that's a great question.
And it's going to be for, to help all students and all that, and it's maybe gonna be located at Exploration Park. It seemed like
And
that name was kind of used for the A&M thing and for that section that you're trying to lease.
yeah.
Okay, but then sometime back, I don't remember how long ago, Space Center Houston came and talked about their 20-year, 25-year plan or something. And they showed plans for this building that was wrapped around a lunar and Martian testing site
Yes.
where they were gonna bring in students and they were gonna work closely with NASA so that y'all could actually test there. And then the public could see science happening and all that. So are there really 3 different?
No.
lunar
So
Martian-
first up, so the question is there a LIMSIF, is what we call the Space Center Houston version of the Lunar Mars facility. There's the Texas A&M version of the Lunar Mars facility, and then there's the outdoor rock yard, right? Here's the way I play it in my head. Well, first, Space Center Houston's facility was kind of conceived as 2 football practice fields connected with a building, right? Those inflatable buildings with the lunar rock yard in it. That has changed, and that is now the Texas A&M facility, right? So, I don't know what I killed us.
That's okay.
But it could have been the Space Center Houston version is now going to be built by Texas A&M. It'll be different, but Space Center Houston will not be building that facility that they proposed. That's kind of how it kind of started. The outdoor rock yard, you have a question that is, why do you need an outdoor rock yard? If you're going to get an indoor rock yard, you need an outdoor rock yard sooner than you're going to get the Texas A&M building, obviously, because being able to do stuff indoors, if you think about it, the lunar terrain, the Artemis rock yard is going to be kind of a testing ground where you're driving over rough stuff and all that kind of stuff. What you're going to get out of the Texas A&M facility is the possibility of putting a habitat inside it and doing a long duration test in air conditioning, working on your equipment and developing your equipment while you're in air conditioning and testing it in air conditioning 24/7, right? You're going to have a tough time in the Artemis rock yard in the middle of summer doing testing.
There's some differentiation.
Yes.
That makes sense. And
Yep.
I could justify 2. I was a little confused about.
Yeah,
3,
there's
and
not
2 of
3.
them being focused on.
Just 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I a little bit different question. I haven't heard any discussion about how to protect against storm surge, which is kind of, most catastrophic thing that happen.
Yeah. So the storm for the general site.
Yeah.
So we had done some things in the past where we hardened the tunnel. We spent about $10 million one year putting in floodgates at building 30, putting in automatic tunnel hatches that would close if the water came up and things like that. The tunnel is our most vulnerable thing. We do set up a little bit, but we are where we are, right? We're at 19 feet, 18 feet elevation down towards the pecan grove, and then 23, 24 feet as you get onto the other end of the site. So we have not done a whole lot other than, our buildings are built up on, you walk upstairs to get in our buildings because they're built up a little bit. But yeah,
The elevation you mentioned, is that current?
Yes.
Or an old number?
No, because the old number used to be bigger. We sunk,
I know.
just like my house. But yeah, so my biggest worry on flooding is flooding in the tunnel. And so we've done things to harden the tunnel, new sump pumps, raise the air vents and a lot of things like that. But yeah, it's a concern. Harvey, we didn't get flooded. We had the streets were flooded. We had I say we didn't get flooded. We did, but not like widespread everything. Sonny Carter had flooding at Harvey, which is even higher elevation. And we got it pretty bad there. We got it in building the laser tunnel lab thing, which somebody knows what that's called. It's in building 14. That was about kind of near the Longhorn Project, near Rocket Park. That tunnel got flooded. And then we had, spotty flooding in other buildings. The 200 area is another low spot, which is one of the reasons we're kind of moving out of the 200 area. And one of the reasons people talk a lot about, why aren't you building something down by the pecan grove? Well, I'd rather build it on the other side of the site where it's, 2 or 3 feet matters sometimes.
Probably have time for one more question.
The Apollo Mission Control, it will be a museum event.
Well, Apollo Mission Control be I think it's kind of a museum now.
Museum now.
Yeah, so we restored it. It looks just like it did in 1969, July, 11th, 1969.
So when I work in that building, sorry, was not a museum here.
Yes. So what?
Museum now.
So a few years ago, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago, we did a historic preservation project that focused on the Apollo Mocher. And so today, if you go into it, and it was extensive. I mean, the documentation, we had to go find the company that put the carpet in. They had to go find back in their shed the roller they used to make that carpet. We had to, kind of hand do the ceiling tiles because they were a little bit different. We had to have people sew the fabric for the seats because it was weird. And then we had to find old Dr. Pepper cans with the flip tops. We had to find Winston-Salem cigarette butts and those yellow ashtrays, right? Even the coffee pot that sat in the room, we found a brand new one on eBay, a brand new one from like 65 on eBay.
It was expensive.
It was very expensive.
$200 million.
No. The city of Webster helped out with a big grant on that. And then some of the federal historic preservation folks. So we worked with a lot of different people to get that project done. Today, if you go to Space Center Houston and you pay for the tram tour of Mission Control, they take you through, you sit down in the visitor room and you see a 10 to 12 minute video that walks you through that day, walks you through the Apollo program that day on to kind of like splashdown. It's very well done. It's
Space Center admission will cover that.
Well, so Space Center Houston has a general admission now, and you reserve those tours and pay separately for the tram tours. Space Center Houston, I'm on the board there too, right? So they were having the problem that customers were, so when you have spring break, your customer service scores go like plummet because it's just packed, right? And you drove from Oklahoma down here to see Mission Control, and you got here and dang thing sold out, right? So they do a lot like other businesses, other museums and stuff now is you reserve stuff online, you reserve a time to come in, you can stay as long as you want, and then you reserve a spot on the tram. So if you fly here from Canada and you want to see Mission Control, you got a ticket at 10 o'clock to go see Mission Control. And that's really helped. It's helped kind of de-densify Space Center Houston. And they have a lot of plans for how to expand and how to make that better. But using when I was, it says bad things about me, but when I was chairman, we would be at 700,000 a year was how many visitors we get. The year before COVID, 2019, we hit 1 million visitors on like December 28th, right? That was amazing. We just passed 1 million visitors this year in September, right? So we're predicted to have like 1.3 million people come through Space Center Houston. So it's really putting a lot of people in there and managing them and keeping them happy and keeping them busy and let them know they can see what they want to see. If you come to Space Center Houston and you're not going to go on the tram tour, that you're okay, right? But if that's the one thing that you wanted to do, and those things are the most popular things with the visitors. If that's the one thing, if you wanted to go to the zoo to see the giraffes and you love giraffes and you get to the zoo and the giraffes they went to Cincinnati or something, right? So you're disappointed, right? The rest of the zoo's great, but you wanted to see giraffes, right?
So those people who work in building 20 now, they cannot enter Apollo.
No, well, it's kind of tough. So it has to be like a special thing because Space Center Houston is rolling people through there. And that movie that uses all the screens and shows you how it all worked and what happened, it's on They activate it when they go in, and it runs like 10 or 15 minutes. And so you can't, if you walk in, you might be walking in the middle of that. So yeah, we don't let, in general, with very few exceptions, we don't let people walk on the floor anymore, because so much effort has been into the staging and everything. Hey, kids, yeah, we don't want your dirty feet on our brand new carpet. But you know, all the staging of everything. When I first got here, yeah, we walked in there and you picked up the red phone and, you know, you hung out. It was kind of cool. Now you think about it and you think, yeah, so that wasn't very respectful for what that room meant to the country. So it's great. You ought to go.
Okay, we're gonna end this right here. Here you go. Here's your notes. Thank you very much for being here, Joel. Thanks for all of your questions. I'm sure, yeah, great round of applause. Great to see what's happening at JSC, what has happened in the years since I used to work there, and things that are coming up. So really appreciate your time this afternoon. Thanks to everybody who was online. Yeah, a couple of words of thanks coming in the chat. Really appreciate that. Our next scheduled first Thursday meeting will be on December 7th. A little bit of an ominous day, but December 7th would be our next first Thursday meeting. We do not, this is important, guys, we do not have access to the Gilruth on that day. So I'm working with some potential speakers to do a Zoom only meeting on December 7th. So we'll try to get information out often between now and then to let you know what the status is going to be for that. So again, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it. It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Thank you.
Thanks for y'all's continued support of NASA.